In 1469, in the thriving city of Florence, Niccolò Machiavelli was born, a man whose name would echo through the centuries, surrounded by controversy. Despite being harshly criticized and often labeled a failed politician, he left an undeniable legacy that shaped Western political thought. His most renowned work, The Prince, remains a cornerstone for those seeking to understand human nature and the inner workings of power. Since its publication, The Prince has elicited intense reactions. Some have called it a manual of evil, a guide to tyranny, even accusing Machiavelli of corrupting his readers. Why? Because he dared to argue that morally righteous actions do not always lead to success, while those deemed cruel or wrong might ensure stability and security. But are Machiavelli's lessons confined to the context of the rulers of his time? Or does he offer teachings we can apply to our own lives? In a world where kindness is often exploited and naivety can become a burden, Machiavelli challenges us to rethink the balance between virtue and resilience. In this video, we will delve into these ideas and reflect on a central question: is being good enough to survive in a world that is so competitive and at times cruel? Join us as we uncover Machiavelli's insights to help navigate the challenges of modern life. To understand Niccolò Machiavelli's philosophy, it is essential to start with his view of human nature. For Machiavelli, human beings are driven, above all, by self-interest. He believed that people tend to be selfish, ungrateful, and motivated by the desire to gain personal advantage, particularly in situations where they face no consequences for their actions. In The Prince, he writes that men are less hesitant about offending someone who makes himself loved than someone who makes himself feared. This perspective reflects his belief that in times of crisis, people often prioritize their own needs over any moral obligations or loyalty. While many consider this view pessimistic, it is, in fact, a practical and strategic analysis of human behavior rooted in the observations of his era. Historical examples reinforce this perception. Political betrayals, leaders abandoning allies in pursuit of power, and even modern conflicts where alliances have been broken for personal gain. These scenarios highlight how Machiavelli's ideas remain relevant across various contexts. This perspective also helps explain why kindness can sometimes be perceived as a weakness. In an environment where so many act out of self-interest, being good without strategy can turn a virtue into a vulnerability. Machiavelli warns us about the crucial difference between appearing good and being good. For him, public perception is a tool of power, perhaps even more effective than true virtue. In The Prince, he asserts that a prince or any leader should strive to appear virtuous, but not necessarily be virtuous in reality. In politics and social interactions, the image one projects often holds greater importance than actual behavior. Machiavelli emphasizes that a ruler who appears merciful, generous, and pious can win the affection of the people. However, if that ruler fails to maintain power, those qualities become meaningless. He notes that, in practice, leaders often need to be cunning and even ruthless to ensure stability. What matters then is the ability to manipulate public perception, keeping the masses in a state of admiration and respect, even if it requires deception or concealing less noble intentions. This principle extends to many areas of life. In modern society, for instance, people often prioritize the appearance of goodness, sometimes at the expense of authenticity. The relentless pursuit of approval and the need to appear perfect can create an illusion of virtue that, deep down, masks weaknesses. However, the deeper question remains: what price do we pay when we commit solely to the appearance of goodness? In one of the most controversial aspects of his work, Machiavelli argues that, in certain cases, cruelty can be a vital strategic tool for maintaining power and ensuring the stability of a regime. He asserts that a prince who uses cruelty in a calculated manner may achieve more effective results than one who tries to govern with excessive kindness or indecision. Machiavelli believes that cruelty, when well applied and justified, can be seen as a necessary means to prevent anarchy and protect the state. For him, cruel actions, when carried out decisively and effectively, can lead to quick and definitive outcomes, creating an environment of order and respect. This approach, in his view, is preferable to excessive benevolence, which risks weakening authority and inviting disorder. He uses historical examples such as Cesare Borgia to illustrate how cruelty, when managed wisely, can foster stability and secure loyalty. Machiavelli's central idea is that a ruler must balance different aspects of leadership, to be feared but not hated, and to know when to act decisively to prevent the erosion of power. In our daily lives, the concept of strategic cruelty can be likened to moments when we must make tough decisions or sever harmful relationships, even when it comes at an emotional cost. Machiavelli, in analyzing politics and human nature, emphasizes how goodness, without proper strategy, can be perceived as a weakness. In a competitive world where personal interests often outweigh moral values, being overly kind can leave a leader vulnerable to betrayal and exploitation. This principle applies not only in the political sphere, but also in personal and professional relationships. The famous phrase by Julius Caesar, "Et tu, Brute," spoken to his stepson at the moment of his betrayal, is a classic example of how even those closest to a leader can turn against them. This iconic expression, which echoes through history, reveals the pain of betrayal and underscores how blind trust in the goodness of others can be fatal. Caesar, who often sought to act generously, found himself vulnerable because he underestimated the power of ambition and desire in others. This moment of fragility not only led to his death, but also to the collapse of his hopes to maintain control over Rome. Machiavelli warns that relying on goodness as the foundation of power leaves a ruler or leader easily manipulated and exploited. True skill lies in recognizing when to be firm, and above all, when kindness must be balanced with decisive action to prevent betrayal and maintain control. In a pragmatic and competitive world, Machiavelli argues, good intentions often fail. He notes that people, especially those in leadership or positions of authority, frequently falter when they attempt to act according to high moral standards without accounting for the complexities and realities of power. To him, absolute morality can be an obstacle, as what seems right in principle may in practice be ineffective or even destructive. By suggesting that rigid adherence to morality can be a limitation to success, Machiavelli argues that leaders must act as circumstances demand, regardless of traditional moral standards. He asserts that a ruler overly attached to morality may find themselves in a position of weakness, outmaneuvered by those more willing to adopt unconventional or morally questionable methods. This idea is reflected in historical instances where idealistic but naive leaders were challenged and defeated by others willing to do whatever was necessary to secure power. A clear example of this can be seen in Niccolò Machiavelli himself, a man whose career was marked by an attempt to uphold moral standards that ultimately did not provide him with political security. This illustrates the vulnerability that goodness, when devoid of pragmatism, can cause. After reflecting on the pitfalls of blind goodness, the challenge lies in finding the balance between being good and being effective. Machiavelli does not advocate abandoning goodness altogether, but suggests being strategic about how and when it is applied. True wisdom, according to him, is knowing when to adopt a firm stance and when to be flexible, ensuring the maintenance of power without sacrificing integrity. In his renowned work, The Prince, Machiavelli proposes that a ruler's true virtue is not in being immaculately good, but in being capable of acting as circumstances demand. He teaches that in times of crisis or threat, what matters is not moral perfection, but the ability to make quick and effective decisions. To be good, therefore, does not mean to be passive or vulnerable. It means acting with discernment and pragmatism. In everyday life, this translates to knowing how to set clear boundaries, understanding when generosity might be exploited, and learning to say no when necessary. Kindness, when it is a conscious choice, does not have to be synonymous with weakness. When applied strategically, it can foster loyalty and trust, while maintaining respect and authority. The balance between kindness and firmness is an essential skill, not only for leaders, but for anyone who seeks to live authentically in a world where intentions are not always pure. Machiavelli's teachings extend far beyond the political realm. They offer powerful lessons for personal development. In today's world, where interpersonal and professional relationships often involve complexity and competition, Machiavellian wisdom teaches us to act with discernment and balance. The key lies in applying his pragmatic insights without losing our humanity. In practice, this might mean understanding when to be flexible and when to assert firm boundaries. It involves recognizing when people are attempting to exploit our kindness, identifying when firmness is necessary, and accepting that kindness alone does not guarantee respect. Machiavelli reminds us that excessive goodness can make us vulnerable, and that we must learn to act strategically to preserve our energy and maintain our standing. This balance also applies to how we manage our own ambitions and shortcomings. Instead of blindly adhering to ideals of moral perfection, we can acknowledge our imperfections and use them constructively to grow and strengthen ourselves. By reflecting on what Machiavelli teaches us, we can become better equipped to face adversity and make more assertive decisions without losing sight of our goals.